Hello. Today we're going to continue talking about slope-intercept form, and we're going to use slope-intercept form to help us graph equations and write slope-intercept form equations. So we touched on this a little bit in the last video. Slope-intercept form of equation looks like y equals mx plus b. Typically we have m and b filled in, so there's a number here for m, a number here for b. The number that's in the m spot represents your slope, which you remember as probably rise over run, or change in y over change in x. What we didn't talk about before was b, which is the y-intercept, where the line crosses the y-axis. So just to give you a rough sketch here, if I have a graph, the y-axis is the vertical one. The y-intercept is whatever y value happens where the graph crosses the y-axis. We like slope-intercept form because it makes the lines pretty easy to graph. Just so you know, on Canvas, I don't have a good way to make you graphs, so you'll be matching graphs, choosing the correct graph for an equation. But in order to be able to do that, it's important to know how to actually graph, which is what I'm going to show you. So when we graph a line in slope-intercept form, we can tell from the equation very easily what the slope and the y-intercept are. It's usually easiest to start by plotting the y-intercept, which is b, on the y-axis, and then use your slope to make your line go all the way across the graph. So let's just dive right into the first one. The number that's the y-intercept is the number at the end of the equation. So b is 2. So I'm going to go to positive 2 on my y-axis, make a point. My slope is 3 over 5, which means I need to go up 3 and to the right 5 to get another point on my line. So up 3, 1, 2, 3, to the right 5 is another point. I do want my line to go all the way across the graph. I don't have enough room to do any more points going to the right, but I do have room over here on the left to do one more point. So the way I do that is I do the opposite of both. Instead of going up 3, I go down 3. Instead of going to the right 5, I go to the left 5. And now you can see all 3 of those points fall on the same line. To make your graph, just once you have as many points as will fit on your graph, connect them with a straight line. On your assignment, you'll be finding the graph that matches this, basically, is what you're looking for. Let's try another one. This time b is 2, so I'm going to go to positive 2 on my y-axis. My slope is negative 5, which we can think of as negative 5 over 1. Anytime your slope is an integer, think of it as over 1 so that you don't forget to go to the right, whatever 1 as well. So since my slope is negative 5, which is the same as negative 5 over 1, I'm going to go down 5 and right 1 to get my next point. So from that 2, I'm going to go down 5 to the right 1. I don't have room to do that again without going off my graph. I also don't have enough room to do that in the other direction without going off my graph either. So sometimes you can only plot 2 points and that's fine. As you can see here, we have a negative slope. It's pretty steep. And there is my finalized graph. 2 more of these. Y-intercept this time is negative 4. So I'm going to go to negative 4 on my y-axis. My slope is also negative. So since it's negative, I'm going to go down the top number, which is 2, and to the right, the bottom number. So down 2 to the right 5. I have just enough room to do that. I can also go up 2 and left 5 to get one more point on my graph, and that's all I have room for. Once I have as many points as will fit, I just connect them with a line with arrows on both ends. One more. My y-intercept this time is positive 4. So I go to positive 4 on my y-axis. My slope is 2, which is the same as 2 over 1. So from that point, I'm going to go up 2 and right 1. Up 2, right 1. I have just enough room to do that. To make my line extend all the way across my graph, I also go down 2, left 1. As many times as I can, which is actually multiple times. Once I've done as many patterns of my slope as I can, I extend my line across the graph, arrows on both ends. So again, if you're graphing from scratch, start with your y-intercept, use your slope to extend your line. On your assignment, you'll be finding the graph that matches like what we just did in the graphing here. So knowing how to graph is important to be able to help find the right graph. The next part here, we're going to kind of go backwards from what we just did. Here they've given us a graph. They want us to write a y equals mx plus b equation. So we're going to put the slope number wherever m is, the number in front of x, we're going to use our y-intercept as b. So your final answer will be y equals something x plus something. Again, I think it's easier to start with the y-intercept. So looking at this first graph, my y-intercept is right here. The y value at that point is -1, so b is -1. Follow that line till you get to the next point that crosses nicely, which is here. And let's count between those 2 points to find our slope. I'm going up 1 and to the right 1, 2, 3. So my slope is 1/3. So my equation is going to look like y equals my slope number, which is 1/3, x, and then my b number, since it's -1, it's -1. You could also write y equals 1/3 x plus -1. That means the same thing, but -1 is a little less writing. Let's try another one. Looking for my graph crosses the y-axis. It's crossing the y-axis at 3, so b is +3. Slope, let's follow that line. Here's the next point that crosses nicely. So my slope is I'm going down 2 and to the right 1. So my slope is -1/2. To write my equation, it's going to be y equals my slope number, which is -1/2, x, and then since my b is positive this time, it's going to be +3. Next graph, here is my y-intercept. The y value of that point is +1. The next point that crosses nicely at the intersection of grid lines is actually right there. So to get from the blue point to the orange point, I'm going up 1, right 1, which is 1/1, or just 1. However you want to write it is fine. So then my equation looks like y equals, my slope is 1, x, and then my y-intercept is 1, so +1. And this would be perfectly fine. Or you may remember that 1x is the same as x, so another way I could write this would just be y equals x plus 1. Either of those are perfectly acceptable, and I would be very happy with. Last one of these, my slope is -4. Or sorry, not slope, my y-intercept is -4. My slope, if I continue this way, I'm not going to find another point that works nicely. So let's backtrack. Where is the next point before that crosses nicely at the intersection of grid lines? It's right here. Remember, if we're counting slope, we always go from left to right. So I'm going to start from the orange and go to the blue. I went down 1, 2, so -2 over 1, or you can think of that as -2. So my slope is -2 over 1 or -2. So my equation is going to be y equals -2, or you could write -2 over 1, x, and then -4. The last bit here is actually the easiest. Instead of having to fiddle around with a graph, they have just straight up told you, this is your slope, this is your y-intercept. They want you to do like we just did, but without the graph part. Write your slope-intercept form equation, y equals mx plus b. Put your slope number in for m, put your y-intercept number in for b. So for this first one, my slope is 9, my y-intercept is 5. So that means b is 5, m is 9. All of these equations are going to look like y equals something x plus something. So I'm going to kind of pre-fill these in. So that way we can just zoom right through when we're ready. First equation, since my slope is 9, it's going to be 9x. And then my y-intercept is +5, so +5. That's all I've got to do. It's what we were just doing back here with the graphs, but instead of having to find m and b, they're straight up giving you m and b. You just have to remember that m is your slope and b is your y-intercept. For the next one, slope or m is -2 over 3. Y-intercept or b is 2. So my equation is going to look like y equals -2 over 3x plus 2. For the next one, slope is -1, so that's m. Y-intercept is -3. So my equation is going to look like y equals -1x minus 3. Or kind of like we talked about in the previous problem, negative 1x is the same as negative x. So another way you could write this would just be negative x minus 3. Either of them are perfectly acceptable right answers. Last one, slope is 7 over 4. Y-intercept is 4. And so my final answer equation is going to look like y equals 7 over 4x plus 4. That is it for slope-intercept form for today. Have a fantastic day.